When the Lions beat the Vikings the other day, that ended the fantasy football season for most people, but that doesn't mean that you need to be done playing fantasy football this season. You can still put your knowledge to the test and win a ton of money. Our friends over at the NFFC are running a postseason hold'em contest, and it couldn't be simpler. You don't have to wait for draft rooms to fill. You aren't stuck adhering to salary cap restrictions. You simply pick the players that you think will score the most points, put them in your lineups, and at the end of the Super Bowl, the winner of this tournament wins $150,000. There's over $260,000 total up for grabs. And I'm going to give you my strategy and my roster construction ideas to hopefully help you win this tournament. If you're unfamiliar with the tournament, let me start off by giving you some of the rules. It's pretty simple, actually. There's 4 rounds. You get the wild card round, the divisional round, the conference round, and of course, the Super Bowl. Every player that you carry from one round to another gets a ×2 multiplier. So if you pick a player in your round 1 team and they make it to round 2, you get 2 times the points. If they make it into round 3, you get 3 times the points. And if that player that you took in the first round makes it all the way to the Super Bowl, you get a 4 times multiplier on that player. Now, there are, based on round to round, some restrictions on how you're able to select players. In round 1, for instance, you cannot have any more than 1 player from the same team. So you are building out a team with 2 quarterbacks, 3 running backs, 3 wide receivers, 3 flex spots, or I'm sorry, 1 flex spot, a defense, and a kicker. So if you're keeping track, that is 12 roster spots that you need to fill. There are 14 teams available, so you're essentially picking players from all but 2 teams. Now, almost anytime I am doing a postseason tournament like this, the first thing I do is I map out my expected playoff bracket. That kind of gives me a good foundation for selecting the players that I want on teams that I expect to do well. And this year, the way that I have it, we're going to start, like I said, from the end, the Super Bowl, and kind of work our way backwards. I have the Baltimore Ravens and the Detroit Lions meeting in the Super Bowl. Both of these teams, the Lions and the Ravens, have a lot of talented players there. But what I'm going to do is select the 2 players that I expect to score the most points from each team, hoping that these teams will make the Super Bowl, giving me that 4 times multiplier. So I'm going to start off with 2 easy selections, in my opinion. I'm going to go with Lamar Jackson and Jameer Gibbs as my first 2 picks. Now, assuming that the Ravens win next week, then I will get double the points for whatever Lamar Jackson does in round 2. And of course, I'm taking a 0 with Jameer Gibbs, but I've got to imagine that the 2 times multiplier next round, 3 times multiplier in the conference championship, and a hopeful 4 times multiplier in the Super Bowl will help offset that 0 that I'm taking in round 1. Now that we've got our Super Bowl picks picked out, the guys that are hopefully going to give us 4 times multipliers in a few weeks, next up is selecting players that I have in the conference championship. Now, the way that my bracket is worked out right now, I have the Baltimore Ravens beating the Kansas City Chiefs, and I have the Detroit Lions beating the Philadelphia Eagles. So hopefully I can get some Chiefs and Eagles players that'll give me 3 times multipliers in the conference round. So for the Eagles, I think that's a pretty obvious choice. I'm going to go with Saquon Barkley, especially with Jalen Hurts on the mend right now, still on concussion protocol as of Monday. We're hoping that a well-rested Saquon Barkley is going to get a massive workload like he's gotten all season. And if the Eagles continue to roll, not only am I getting points in round 1, but then I get a 2 times multiplier and a potential 3 and 4 times multiplier on Saquon Barkley as long as they continue to advance. For the Chiefs, there's a lot of options here. Patrick Mahomes, of course, is somebody that a lot of people are going to want to draft. Travis Kelce could always rewind the clock and look good in the postseason, but I am going to go with rookie wide receiver Xavier Worthy. Over the last 3 games of the season, he averaged 19.3 fantasy points per game, scoring a touchdown in all 3 outings. It feels oddly reminiscent of Rashee Rice last year, a rookie getting hot at the right time. That's a bet I am willing to make. And with that huge ceiling and the range of outcomes that Xavier Worthy possesses, the multipliers could be huge down the stretch. So at this point now, I have 1 player from each of the teams that I expect to be playing in the conference championship week. I have Xavier Worthy and Lamar Jackson in the AFC, and Jameer Gibbs and Saquon Barkley in the NFC. Now, that's how I expect this to shake out, but I'm often wrong. So what we're going to do now is we're going to look at some of the other matchups earlier in the playoffs and try to map out some potential exit routes where if things don't go the way that I had planned, I can still pivot to another team, hopefully still stacking those big multipliers through this entire tournament. Now, if you're keeping track at home, we have 4 players, and I want to get 4 more that I expect to come out of the wild card round as winners. Josh Allen is another player that I want. And of course, some people might look at my current roster construction and think that I'm potentially capping my upside. By drafting two quarterbacks in the AFC in round one, there's no chance of me getting two four times multiplier Super Bowl quarterbacks facing off against each other. Now, a lot of people, when they build these teams, will pick one quarterback from the AFC and one quarterback from the NFC that they expect to meet in the Super Bowl, hoping to get the two four times multipliers going up against each other. What I'm going to do instead is take Josh Allen here. What that does is that sets me up that if I'm wrong, I could still build a very strong team. Well, I expect Lamar Jackson to win. If Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen are forced to face off against each other in round two, and Josh Allen, then I can simply pivot my strategy from going heavy on the Ravens to heavy on the Bills. So the two quarterbacks that I'm starting off with in round one are going to be Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. The Vikings and Rams are going to be a really fun round one matchup. And while the Vikings are the favorite, I don't want to bet against the Rams. This is a team that has won a Super Bowl recently. Matthew Stafford has a lot of postseason experience. And right now, Puka Nakua has been red hot. Actually, since week 10, since he's become a full time player, he is second in scoring behind only Jamar Chase. He has taken over as the wide receiver one in Los Angeles, and I don't expect that to change. So I am going to take Puka Nakua as the sixth player that I'm putting into this lineup, another player that I expect to come out of round one as a winner and a potential two-time multiplier in round two. Xavier Worthy is hot right now. Puka Nakua is hot right now. And another young wide receiver who is heating up at the right time is Lad McConkey. The Chargers have been on a tear right now, and Lad McConkey is the clear wide receiver one here. Now, I don't know how far the Chargers are going to make it, but I want to at least get a Charger on my team because right now, this marriage between Jim Harbaugh and Justin Herbert has been electric, and they could end up getting hot through the playoffs. So, Lad McConkey is the wide receiver one here. He's been catching a ton of catches, both deep, short, and intermediate, inside and outside. He really has developed into a well-rounded receiver. So I'm going to take Lad McConkey as the other player that I want coming out of round one. Now, that leaves one other winner that I have in round one, the Washington Commanders. Now, Brian Robinson's been a bit boomer bust, and he's a little bit banged up right now. Terry McLaurin has had a sky high ceiling, but the floor has been admittedly shaky. So I'm going to do something a little bit weird right here. Most people, what they're willing to do with their kickers and defense is use those on teams that they expect to exit in the first round. Even though I expect Washington to win, I'm going to go ahead and take their kicker here. This could be a high scoring affair that Washington is going to be playing against Tampa Bay, two very good offenses with two not so great defenses, and that could bode well for the kicker here. Now, additionally, if Washington wins like I expect, I'll be one of the few people getting a times two multiplier on my kicker in round two, something most people aren't focused on. So while most are just taking that, one and done kicker every single week, I'm hoping to get a times two multiplier here with the kicker. So at this point now, I have eight players on my roster, all that I expect to be on winning teams coming out of round one. We've got Xavier Worthy with the number one seed Chiefs. We got Josh Allen with the Buffalo Bills, Lamar Jackson with Baltimore Ravens, and Lad McConkey with the Los Angeles Chargers. On the NFC side of the ball, we've got Jameer Gibbs with the Detroit Lions, Jalen Hurts with the Philadelphia Eagles, Puka Nakua with the Los Angeles Rams, and of course, as we talked about, we're going to take the team kicker for the Washington Commanders. At this point, we have four spots remaining that we need to fill, and one of them is going to be a team defense. Now, this again is where you can potentially be wrong, but you can set yourself up for these exit ramps where if you're wrong, you can simply change direction and go to a new destination. And what I'm going to do is one of the closest matchups and one that I have projected to be an upset. I expect the Los Angeles Rams to beat the Minnesota Vikings. But what if I'm wrong? I'm wrong a lot. So, what I'm going to do is draft Justin Jefferson on this team. That way, if the Vikings are able to beat the Los Angeles Rams, I still have Justin Jefferson going into round two as a potential two-time multiplier. In my expertise, in my opinion, I would say that Justin Jefferson is probably the safest player you can pick in round one. He doesn't have a bye. You know he's going to put up big points in round one. The Rams don't have anybody that could potentially stop him. And if the Vikings do win any games, that multiplier with Jefferson is going to be really, really nice to have. Two other upsets that I projected are the Chargers over the Texans and the Commanders over the Buccaneers. But what if I'm wrong? Well, really simply, what we're going to do here is add two playmakers to the two teams that Vegas prefers that I expect to be upset. And those two players are pretty easy for me. Nico Collins is the last standing wide receiver and a dominant wide receiver one. He's had some time to rest up now, hoping that hamstring injury that hampered him early in the season is now in the rear view. Nico Collins, easy addition to this team. And then Bucky Irving has been a star. He has usurped the role from Rashad White. I don't expect to see a lot of Sean Tucker in this playoff matchup. Bucky Irving has been red hot right now, and he's a player that I want. And if the Tampa Bay Buccaneers do continue to get hot, like I've said with all of these players right now, it's okay to be wrong because you can still set yourself up to get a player like Bucky Irving who potentially can get 2, 3 times multipliers over the next 2 weeks. Now that leaves us with the team defense, and there are still three teams left that I haven't drafted a player from. Those teams are the Packers, the Broncos, and the Steelers. Now, of course, because I drafted Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen, I don't want any Broncos or Steelers defenses, as that's essentially a bet against myself. The Packers, however, are a defense that I am okay drafting. On one hand, Jalen Hurts might not be 100% for this matchup. Still in concussion protocol. We don't expect what his workload is going to look like in this matchup. So the Packers make for a good team defense. Now, I admittedly got lucky here with the way that it worked out. And there was a lot of playing around with this before I finally got a configuration that I felt good about. But the Packers defense, one, it checks the box for me getting another team that I need. Remember, we have to fill out 12 roster spots out of 14 possible teams. So the two teams that I will not be drafting players from, the Broncos and the Steelers, I will hope will be eliminated in round one, as I don't have any players from those teams that I can carry multipliers over on to into the next round. So there we have it. I'll walk you through the whole team right now. It's kind of crazy that you could build these teams without having to worry about salary cap restrictions and without having to worry about drafts. You can load up your team with big names. So the quarterbacks that I have are Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. Now, what that does for me is sets me up for two different options. Well, I expect Lamar Jackson to defeat Josh Allen in the divisional round. If for whatever reason Josh Allen is able to pull out that win, then I simply change my strategy. And where right now I'd be hoping to add players like Derrick Henry next week for a 2 times multiplier, and then maybe Zay Flowers the week after for an additional multiplier. If the Baltimore Ravens lose to the Buffalo Bills, then I simply change my course of direction. I add James Cook next week. The week after that, I add Khalil Shakir or Amari Cooper or Keon Coleman or Dalton Kincaid. The possibilities really are endless. At the running back position, I have Jameer Gibbs, Saquon Barkley, and Bucky Irving. Well, I expect Jameer Gibbs to make the Super Bowl and Saquon Barkley to make the conference championship. It doesn't always work out that way, and I've hedged with Bucky Irving. I'll look to also add additional running backs after week one, potentially set myself up for 3 times multipliers in the Super Bowl. At the wide receiver position, it's actually a wide receiver slash tight end flex. I didn't go after any tight ends because there just aren't a lot of good tight ends to select. I might take Mark Andrews, if the Ravens make it to the Super Bowl, but for now, I'm okay just kind of fading the tight end position. So at the wide receiver slash tight end position, you have 4 slots there. I went with Xavier Worthy, Puka Nacua, Lad McConkey, and Justin Jefferson. My team kicker is the Washington Commanders, and my team defense is the Green Bay Packers. Now, if you're following at home and you're understanding how this contest is going to work, you can kind of see the path that I've set myself up for the highest end range of outcomes. So let's just imagine that I am correct. Let's imagine that the Baltimore Ravens and the Detroit Lions meet in the Super Bowl. One, I've already got 2 players on my team, Jameer Gibbs and Lamar Jackson, that will have that 4 times multiplier going into the Super Bowl. But after this week, the 2 players I'll be targeting, Derrick Henry and Amon St. Brown, would have 3 times multipliers in the Super Bowl. And then, assuming those teams make it into the next week, I'll pick up Zay Flowers and Jared Goff, who will have 2 times multipliers in the Super Bowl. And from there, then I can try to get a little bit unique, whether I want to go after Rashad Bateman or Mark Andrews. Maybe I want to go, if David Montgomery is back and healthy, I can potentially pick him up, or maybe add a Sam Laporta. The options really are endless with the lack of restriction here. This is a really fun format that is new to me. I haven't played this before. There could be some flaws in my logic. Maybe it's sound. Either way, we definitely want you to play this tournament as well. It is a lot of fun and an easy chance to win a lot of money. The entry into this tournament is $200. There's $260,000 total in prizes that'll be giving out, with $150,000 at the top for the first place winner. Now, we realize that that is a big contest and a big ask. If you're looking for something a little bit more low stakes, something that you can kind of dip your toes in the water without having to commit to a $200 buy-in, we're also running the NFFC Mini Playoff Hold'em that is hosted by football guys over with our friends at the NFFC. This is just a $50 buy-in. There's $50,000 at the top for the grand prize with $97,000 in total prizes. So same exact structure as the one that we just walked you through, but a little bit cheaper and a little bit more affordable for people that aren't looking for a $200 buy-in. Please let me know if you played this contest before. Let me know what you think about my logic. You can find me on Twitter at Dave Kluge, Kluge, or you can leave a comment right here in the right here in the YouTube comments below, and I'll be sure to answer them. Thank you so much for tuning in. Alfredo and I will be back tomorrow with a new episode, kind of looking back at the season retroactively, some of the things that we learned, some of the things we got wrong, and we're also going to have interviews with our contest winners from the Football Guys Fantasy Football Show Listener League, as well as the first inaugural Football Guys Bowl. Thank you so much for tuning in, and best of luck out there in your NFFC tournaments.